what do we have here? We have the Twosun TS64. Now this one I've had for about a year. I looked it up. My AI assistant, Kendra, had said, you know, I'm not following up on these unboxings. I unboxed this thing a year ago.
Better late than never.
So, and I haven't really told much about it since then. I did make another little video talking about detent ramps that concern this one, because I had done a detent ramp on this one, and the detent ramp is still great. No problems with it. No blade play, no detent lash. So still running good. So that part of it I kind of covered.
In your face, detent ramp haters.
But just in general, how the knife is held up. You know, I don't think I've ever sharpened it. Let's see. Will it cut a piece of paper? In the 1 year I've had it, what have I opened? 10 boxes with it, probably. So it should still be sharp. It's definitely got some hiccups. Actually, I think I've done some other stuff with it other than just open boxes. So one might expect that it could need a sharpening, and it does. It needs a sharpening. It'll cut paper, but you know, a lot of hiccups. I can feel little bumps in it and stuff. What's it supposed to be? D2, I think. Yeah, D2. And Twosun D2 is not known to be, you know, the best D2 out there. I think Koenig, as far as the Chinese makers, is some of the best D2 out there. I think, you know, this one is probably a little bit on the soft side for D2. That would be my guess, just by how it acts, how Twosun knives sharpen up. Feels like it's a little toward the high 50s instead of the low 60s type range. So, and I don't even know what D2 is actually supposed to be. I did a little bit of anodizing on the clip. It's a real dark, kind of subtle lightning ano, which probably needs to be redone. It's just not very good. That's the only thing I've done to it. Oh, the blade. Shoot, I forgot. This blade, originally, I could put a picture of the original blade above it. So let's do that. And I just grind this down. I ground this down a little bit, made kind of a harpoon out of it. I don't know why, just because I thought the original blade kind of came up a little bit too high and looked kind of weird.
1 year ago.
We got a Twosun, what was it? TS64 D2. Okay, 2 bags. I like that. That's better than I usually do. Okay, this thing's a big chunker. This one is freaking great. I mean, it's great as far as I can tell. You know, I'll mess with it, probably take it apart and clean it, do the usual knife things with it. You know, open a box.
Then you'll give a full review. Like a year from now?
Although this thing seems damn capable. That's a big beefy blade. I like it a lot, man. I should just shut up about it now.
1 year later. Now.
But really, it's a cool looking blade even from the factory how it normally is. One thing I like about this one a lot is how, well, the blade, it looks great when it's deployed. And when it's closed, the thumb hole lines up with the body. A lot of knives don't have that for some reason. It's almost like the blade hole, if it has a blade hole, you know, obviously the ones with thumb studs don't have a blade hole, but if it has a blade hole, it's almost like the blade hole was never concerned with lining up with anything on the knife, which is, it's kind of weird to me. I mean, I don't know. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to pause. I'm going to grab a couple of knives that have, you know, kind of a good aesthetic as far as this goes. Examples of how it's done well, and then some examples of how it's not done well.
I'll sing a ditty while we wait. Mama told me when I was young, come sit beside me, my only son, and listen closely to what I say. If you can do this, it'll help you. Some sunny day. Ah, yeah.
All right, here's another. This is not a Twosun, but it's a Sixleaf. And Sixleaf and Twosun are like brothers. So let's look at this thumb hole. Okay, it lines up with the handle nicely when it's open, but then when it's closed, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't look right. That's not great. You could have done better. We could have made it shape more like this hole, or made the hole shaped a little bit more like the other, whatever. Make it work. Make it make sense, you know? Here's another Twosun. It's not so bad, but why not make the thumb hole kind of match this shape here, or make this shape come down a little bit more and come up a little sharper to match the thumb hole. If you like this, that, you know, oval, I don't know, conical oval shape of your thumb hole, then match it, make this kind of match it so that when it's closed, it looks good. Now here's an example of how it's done right. This is a Kansept, and they do it very similar to the way this one's done, to where the thumb hole matches up with the cutaway, with this finger choil there, and still looks good when it's open. There's nothing wrong with it at all when it's open. I mean, it doesn't necessarily match up with anything, but it doesn't fight with anything, you know, aesthetically. So that's a good job. My precious areas here, it doesn't necessarily line up with anything, but it doesn't really clash with anything either, because it's way up above, and you know, the lines don't necessarily tie in, but they don't look bad. So it's kind of one of those things where they kind of avoided having to tie in or not tie in with the handle. This one, terrible. Look at this. Come on, Devo. So this is a Devo growler, and it has a nice rounded finger choil, as you might suspect, and then it has a squared off thumb hole. But I mean, it works well. It has such room that it doesn't matter as far as how it works. So it doesn't take anything away from, you know, being able to access the blade. But why not square up this cutaway into the handle a little more to match up with this? It would look cool. It'd be a cool look, but they just went circle here, square here. It's the old square peg in the round hole deal. What is this one? A Damn Designs. A very cool knife. Nice big thumb hole, so you can flick it and thumb it and all that stuff. But I mean, they could have done better tying it in. Doesn't quite tie in. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure what these companies are thinking, like that it doesn't matter how the blade looks when it's closed. It doesn't matter, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man. This Kaiser, they did pretty well. It doesn't necessarily tie in, but at least the fuller, as it runs across here, is nice and parallel with the top of the handle there. So it looks good, even though the hole doesn't necessarily tie in with this nice circular, or, you know, semicircular part there. It doesn't necessarily tie in with that, but it doesn't clash with it because it goes straight across and kind of matches up with this curve here. So I think it looks pretty good. They could have done a little better, maybe. Tied in just a little bit somehow, but they didn't. So, you know, I'm not mad at it. But this one, just really well done. Like, it lines up perfectly. Like, if you're going to bother doing it, do it like this, where you match it up perfectly, and then you can do other things with the other curves on the blade and stuff. This one has a really, really nice flipper tab on it. Just feels like a pillow for your finger. Really good. And it doesn't stick out super far on either side. It doesn't stick out really hardly at all when you're looking down this, you know, it doesn't stick way out or anything like some, like this Kaiser Critical. I even had to cut this one down. It used to stick out more, a lot more even than it did now, or than it does now. Thing stuck out way far, which is, you know, kind of old school. Nothing wrong with it necessarily, but it, you know, it's better when things are kind of tightened up, a little tighter, closer to the body to me. Because they can be, and they work, and they can work fine. I think I never messed with this choil. Sometimes I make these choils a little bigger. This one was perfect right from the factory. It didn't have to be made bigger. The sharpening angle of it is perfect. Lock access is excessive, which means good. Still not really drop shutty. It never has been, although it's close. It's so close to being drop shutty. I wonder if a little oil would do it. I have oil here since I'm at the Iowa Knife Museum, which also, by the way, is sponsoring this episode of Pry Bar Knives. Iowa Knife Museum. Tons of fun for the whole family. Knives and knife paraphernalia. We have firearms and a 100-yard shooting range. For the kids, we have a full-featured TV. And for the wives, we have magazines. So come on out to the Iowa Knife Museum. We have knives and you want to see them. All right, let's see if we can get a little this high-end, super expensive oil and see if it will do anything to this guy. And this is nano oil that costs like $500 an ounce. I have no idea. It's expensive though. I don't think it's, maybe not quite that expensive. Nope, didn't make it drop shutty. Definitely feels smooth, but not quite drop shutty still. Where I put it was right on the detent ball, and that's the part that rubs on the blade, and basically the part that keeps. See, if the lock bar wasn't pressing against the blade, and that little detent ball wasn't pressing against the blade would just swing like this. But as soon as you let go of the lock, now it's up against the blade. It's not swinging like that. So I'm opening the lock. Now it's pressing against the blade and stopping it from being drop shutty. But this thing is really close to drop shutty, and it's also just butter smooth. It's a really good knife. I would say the only downfall of it is it's a tiny bit heavy. I don't remember the weight of it. I think this scale always screws me. The one they have here, I need to get them a new one because it always doesn't. See, is that ounces? I think it is. Yep, it overloads it all the time. I think it only goes up to 4 ounces, 4.5 ounces, something like that. So that scale's useless. But I think this is about a 4.5, 5 ounce. Yeah, about a 5 ounce knife. So it's a tad on the heavy side. That's okay though, because it feels so steady and stout and strong that the weight of it. I mean, look how thick that blade is. It's a pretty thick blade. Let's see. Here's another one with a finger hole that doesn't quite line up with anything, although it doesn't look too bad, even though it doesn't really line up. Anyway, let's look at the blade thicknesses. I mean, this is it's a Reich. Reich usually makes some fairly beefy knives, and this blade isn't thin, but compared to this Twosun, it looks a little thin. Let's see, what does the Arius have to say about blade thickness? Okay, the Arius is easily as thick, maybe a hair thicker, hard to say, at its thickest point, but then it's also tapering down and getting thinner as it goes, so interesting. Let's get that guy out here. That is a thick boy. So the Kaiser Critical is thicker than the blade on this Twosun. So it's not hugely thick. It's not a super fat, chunky guy, but in general, you would say it's a chunky knife. Great knife, great feel, great ergos. Yeah, just no issues with it 1 year later. Great knife. It's a keeper to me. I'll probably keep it until, I die, and then my wife sells it at a yard sale for $2, and, I'll be okay watching that as a ghost. Have a nice day.